Um, One of my cousins, it was Uncle Nandor's. I did tell you, I think I did tell you that Uncle Nandor went back to Europe after the war. And he fathered two more children. I'm sure you must have met Uncle Nandor's daughter, Haichu. We called her Helena Bohm. And he fathered a son, Meyer, a very beautiful child. And from some childhood sickness, he became totally blind. And I know I had pictures of him and gave them to somebody in the family. I'm sure Helena had them, and maybe Rose has them now. But Uncle Nandor took his son, Meyer, his blind son, who was very, very talented in music. It was piano and violin. And Uncle Nandor took Meyer to Vienna to attend the Conservatory of Music to study his gift. Well, just before Shabbos, Uncle Nandor would go to Vienna to bring his son home for the weekend and then take him back to study. They were waiting in line to get on the train. I imagine it was the train, when the Nazis were looking for people who were not perfect, because they would not tolerate a person if they weren't perfect. My cousin Meyer was blind, so in their eyes he was not perfect, and they snatched him from his father, Uncle Nandor, with some kind of promise, something, but Uncle Nandor never saw him after that, or none of the cousins, aunts and uncles. That was a very sad thing, and I think they really digested the horrors of the Holocaust more so from that terrible, terrible experience. May they all rest in peace and give us memories of when they were alive. I don't know what else I can tell you today. You must remember, maybe I can tell you something about myself. After my dad came home from Europe, I was literally sent to Detroit to meet. We had a cousin, we called her Aunt Jenny, and Uncle Morris had two daughters, Grace and Ruth, that I should go to Michigan and associate myself with different clubs and be with Jewish families. I was the only Jewish girl in the whole town of Carroll, which wasn't very much, maybe 5,000 people. And now there I go again, I forgot what I wanted to say. So I went to Detroit. My mother and dad found a room for me with the family, and remember 35, it was still depression, just hauling out of it, and nobody had work, and I was supposed to go to college, but there was a personal incident. I'm not going to go into it, but I was determined not to go back. I felt that my parents didn't want me, and that's why they sent me to the big city. But no, that is not the reason. When I approached them with that, they both were very saddened that I had those thoughts. They sent me because they wanted me to have a better life than living in such a tiny city with no opportunity. They thought there wasn't, but you know, if you will something, it can come true. Anyway, I did not know the city because I left it when I was about, well, I was 18 years old. No, when I left it to go to Carroll, I can't remember. Anyway, I was still in school, elementary school. So I was determined to get a job, and the people I lived with, because of their financial situation, they didn't even have a telephone. So I went to Aunt Jenny's, where I went one night a week for dinner and spend time with my cousins, and through them met their friends. And I asked Aunt Jenny if I could use her telephone number. I wanted to insert an ad in the daily paper, one of the daily papers, that I was looking for a job more for experience than salary. Well, I did get several calls, and I had a call from a lady, Mrs. Glenser. She kind of interviewed me a little bit, and she asked me to come to see her. They had a tool and die shop, she and her husband. They had no children, and I dressed up as sophisticated looking as I could. I probably had 3 dresses to my name. And they explained this was on Epworth Boulevard. Never heard of it, and you probably have never heard of it. I had to take 2 streetcars. It took me an hour to get there, and I was interviewed. And she showed me a room, oh, maybe the size of 10, 12 feet square, maybe more. From the ceiling to the floor were different billings and mail that had to be filed. And she was very, very plain in her words to say, Miss Stern, do you know how to file? I said, yes, I do. After you get all these things filed, make folders, printed labels, then that ends your job. Are you still willing? I said, yes. My salary was $7 a week, working from 9 to 5 and traveling 2 hours, 2.5 hours a day. Well, that $7, of course, didn't go too far, but I would stop between getting home and transferring to the other streetcar. There was a Cunningham's drugstore on the corner of 12th and Claremont. And I would go there, and for 5 cents, I would get a bowl of chili, and they even gave you oyster crackers with it. That was my supper. I had to stretch that $7, but my parents did contribute to the rent, which was $13 a month. So you can imagine, none of us had a lot, but we had each other. And some weekends